The night was quiet until the sky burned bright red. A roaring sound split the silence, shaking the ground under the small house at the edge of the forest. Daniel looked up from his workbench, his tools still in his hands beside him. His daughter Lila pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Dad, what is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling between fear and excitement. A bright object tore through the clouds, spinning and trailing smoke like a dying comet. Then came the explosion. A blinding flash deep in the woods, followed by a low thunder that made the windows rattle. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and ran to the door. "Stay here, Lila," he said firmly, but she was already pulling on her boots. "I'm coming too," she said, her voice brave but soft. Daniel hesitated for a second, then sighed. "Fine, but stay close to me." They entered the dark forest, their footsteps crunching on the wet leaves. Smoke rose between the trees, glowing orange under the half-moon. The smell of burning metal filled the air, sharp and strange. They followed the light until they reached a clearing. There, half buried in the earth, was a ship unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It was shaped like a tear, smooth and silver, now broken and cracked. Steam hissing from its sides, something moved inside. Daniel raised his light and froze. A figure crawled out of the wreck, tall and thin, covered in armor that shimmered like liquid glass. The figure fell to its knees, trembling. When Daniel stepped closer, he saw it wasn't human. Its skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the smoke. Its eyes large and shining like silver, but the face was scarred. One side burned, the armor melted into it. The creature raised a shaking hand. "Don't look at me," it said in a voice both mechanical and gentle. Daniel lowered the light, speaking calmly. "You're hurt. Let me help you." The alien turned its face away. "No, you will fear me." Before Daniel could reply, Lila stepped forward, holding out her small hand. "You're not scary," she said softly. "You're just hurt." The alien's eyes widened. As if the child's words pierced through the pain, Daniel moved quickly, wrapping his jacket around the alien's shoulders. "Come on," he said. "We can't stay here. Someone will see the crash." The alien hesitated, looking back at the wreck, but then nodded weakly. Daniel helped her walk. Her body surprisingly light yet trembling with every step. Lila walked beside her, holding her hand like she was afraid to let go. Behind them, the wreckage sparked one last time and went silent, swallowed by the dark forest. When they reached the cabin, Daniel laid her gently on the couch. Lila ran to bring water and blankets. The alien whispered, "Why, help me," Daniel replied. "Because no one deserves to die alone out there." The alien's silver eyes flickered with something close to emotion. She tried to speak again, but the words faded, and she fell unconscious. Daniel examined the wounds, realizing her body wasn't like theirs. Her blood glowed faintly blue, her skin cool to the touch. There were strange marks across her chest, moving like tiny lights under her skin. He didn't understand it, but he knew one thing: she wasn't dangerous. She was desperate. He cleaned the burns as best he could, his hands steady though his heart raced. Lila sat beside the couch, watching the alien sleep. "She looks sad," Lila whispered. Daniel nodded. "She's far from home, outside." The forest was silent again, but the air felt heavier. Something about the crash didn't feel random. He looked out the window, scanning the night sky. In the distance, tiny blue lights blinked among the stars. Moving slowly, searching, Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He turned off every light in the house, locked the doors, and told Lila to sleep. But he didn't sleep. He sat by the window, holding his rifle and watching the forest. The alien breathed quietly, her face peaceful now, her skin glowing faintly in the dark. And then something strange happened as Lila slept nearby. The marks on the alien's skin began to glow brighter. They pulsed softly, in rhythm with Lila's heartbeat. Daniel stared in silence, realizing that whatever had fallen from the sky tonight wasn't just a visitor. It was the beginning of something far greater. Morning light slipped through the curtains, touching the quiet room. Daniel sat beside the couch where the alien woman still slept, her chest rising slowly, her skin glowing faint blue under the blanket. He hadn't slept all night, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't answer. Who was she? Where did she come from, and why did the stars still move like hunters above the forest? Lila woke up and tiptoed to her father. "Is she okay?" she whispered, clutching her toy rabbit. Daniel smiled faintly. "She's alive. That's what matters." The alien stirred, her fingers twitching, her eyes fluttering open when she saw them. She gasped and tried to sit up, her body tense like a cornered animal. "Easy," Daniel said gently, raising his hands. "You're safe here. The alien's gaze darted around, scanning every corner, every sound, her instincts sharp and trained. Lila brought a bowl of warm water and a towel. The alien stared at her as if she couldn't understand kindness. Lila smiled. "You're home now, okay?" The alien blinked slowly, her voice weak but calm. "Home? No, this is not my world." Her words carried a strange accent, half metallic, half melodic, like two voices speaking together. When she tried to stand, her legs failed her. Daniel supported her, and that's when she saw the mirror on the wall. The woman froze, staring at her reflection. Her breathing grew fast, panic flashing across her glowing eyes. No, don't look," she whispered. Stepping back, her hands trembling, Daniel caught her before she fell, confused and worried. "It's just a mirror," he said softly, but she shook her head. "That face. That monster," she said, her voice breaking. "That's not me anymore." Lila looked between them. Puzzled. "You're not a monster," she said. "You're beautiful." The alien's eyes filled with tears that shimmered like liquid light. "No one from my world would say that," she whispered. "They left me to die because I am not perfect." Daniel and Lila exchanged a look, both silent, not knowing what to say. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Then your world is wrong." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned her face away. "My name," she said quietly, "is Sarah." Lila smiled brightly. "Hi, Sarah." "I'm Lila." Sarah tilted her head slightly, curious about the child's innocence. It was the first time she had spoken her name since the crash, and it felt strange in her mouth, like a forgotten melody. Daniel started examining the small device Sarah had carried. It looked like a piece of her armor, but pulsed with light. He tried to ask her what it was, and she explained that it was a beacon, a signal to call her people. But her face darkened as she added, "They won't come to save me. They will come to finish what they started." Daniel felt a cold wave of fear. "They're looking for you," he said. Sarah nodded slowly. "And now, they will find you too." Outside, strange sounds echoed faintly. Like thunder mixed with humming metal, Lila ran to the window. "Dad, look," she said, pointing to the sky. 3 blue lights drifted through the clouds, scanning the forest with thin beams of energy. Daniel turned off the lights instantly, his heart pounding. Sarah's body glowed faintly in the dark, reacting to the search beams outside. "They can sense my energy," she said softly. "We have to hide." Daniel led them down to his basement workshop. It smelled of oil and old metal, filled with tools and half-finished machines. Sarah touched the walls, feeling the coldness of human technology. "This place is simple," she said, "but honest." Daniel worked quickly, building a rough shield device using wires and a broken satellite dish. Lila sat beside Sarah, whispering stories about her school and her drawings. Sarah listened quietly, her expression softening each time the child spoke. "I used to have a sister," Sarah said quietly. "She was small like you. What happened to her?" Lila asked. Sarah looked away. "She learned to stop caring." The words hung heavy in the dim light. Daniel finished the jammer and switched it on, the room humming with static energy. The blue lights outside flickered, confused, and drifted away. Sarah looked up at him in surprise. "You stopped them," he smiled faintly. "For now," she reached out, placing her glowing hand over his. "Thank you, human." Daniel met her gaze. "Seeing both pain and strength there, name's Daniel," he said simply. She nodded, repeating the name softly as if memorizing it. Daniel. When the night grew quiet again, they stayed hidden in the basement. Lila fell asleep against Sarah's arm, her small fingers wrapped around the alien's cold hand. Sarah watched her for a long time, her heart unsure how to feel. For the first time since the crash, she didn't feel like a soldier or an outcast. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, safe but above the quiet forest. Far beyond the clouds, a larger ship waited, its scanners locked onto Earth's surface, its crew whispering one word, Sarah. The night was heavy and quiet, but Daniel could feel danger in the air. He stood near the basement window, watching the dark forest where faint blue light still flickered between the trees. Sarah sat in the corner repairing a broken part of her armor, her movements slow but precise. Her glowing fingers traced the alien metal, fusing it with energy that hummed like a quiet song. Lila slept beside her, holding Sarah's hand tightly even in dreams. Daniel couldn't decide if the alien woman was a miracle or a warning. Suddenly, a distant hum filled the air, low and steady, like the growl of thunder that refused to fade. Sarah froze, her eyes wide. "They're here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel turned to her. Who? My hunters, she said. They follow the energy of my ship, and now they follow me. He looked out again, and there they were, 3 small crafts gliding above the forest like silent ghosts. Their blue lights cut through the fog. Searching every inch of land, Daniel's heart pounded. We need to hide deeper. Sarah shook her head. No, your home will not stop them. They can smell my life force. She touched her chest where faint lights pulsed under her skin. Daniel frowned. Then we shut that down. Sierra gave a faint smile. If I shut it down, I die, Daniel cursed under his breath, thinking fast. He grabbed a set of tools and opened one of his old defense drones. Something he had built years ago for research. I can rewire this to scramble their signal, he muttered. Sarah watched him work, impressed by his focus and skill. You are not a soldier, she said quietly. No, he replied. I'm a father. Outside, the hunters landed. Their ships melting into the shadows. 3 tall figures stepped out. Wrapped in armor that shimmered like glass, they moved with deadly grace. Their helmets scanning the ground, Sarah closed her eyes, whispering something in her language. A soft chant filled with sorrow. Daniel felt the hair on his neck rise as a deep vibration rolled through the house. The aliens were sending out a signal, a pulse of energy that shook every wall. Lila woke up frightened. Dad, what's happening? Daniel grabbed her shoulders. Stay close to Sierra. Through the basement window, Daniel saw the hunter's blue eyes glowing in the dark. He flipped the switch on his jammer and the power surged. The lights outside flickered, confused. The hunter's scanners malfunctioned for a moment. Sarah's skin dimmed, her energy flickering weakly as if the jammer drained her strength too. I can't breathe, she gasped. Daniel turned the power down. Finding the balance between saving her and staying hidden, the hunters began to speak through their helmets. Their language sharp and metallic. Sarah understood every word. They say they will burn the forest if they must, she whispered. Daniel clenched his jaw. Then we move before they do. He packed a small bag, grabbed a map and looked at her. Can you walk? She nodded weakly. I can fight if I must. They sneaked through the back door. Moving silently through the misty forest, Lila walked between them, holding Daniel's hand. Her small voice trembling. Are they bad people? She asked. Sarah looked down, her expression cold and sad. They are not people anymore, she said. They are soldiers who forgot what mercy means. The forest glowed faint blue as the hunters spread out. Daniel guided them through narrow paths, his flashlight off, trusting only moonlight. They reached an old tunnel. A leftover from an abandoned mine, Daniel pushed aside a rusted gate, helping Lila crawl inside, then Sarah. The air was cold and damp. The tunnel stretching into blackness, they hid deep within. Listening to the sound of machines outside, for a while there was silence. Then came a new sound, a sharp electronic beep echoing through the ground. Sarah's eyes widened. They found the wreck. Daniel's stomach twisted. The crash site? Yes, she said. They will trace every energy cell. And they will come here next. She touched the wall with her glowing hand. Strange marks appeared, pulsing faintly. I can make them think I'm somewhere else, she said. Daniel watched as the marks formed a web of light across the stone. It shimmered for a second, then vanished, leaving only a faint warmth. They will follow the false signal, she said weakly. But it will not last long. Lila leaned against her shoulder. Whispering, You're so brave, Sarah smiled faintly. Brave is another word for scared but trying anyway. Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. Realizing how much pain she carried, she wasn't a monster. She was someone who had lost everything. Outside, the hunters moved away, following the false trail deeper into the forest. Daniel exhaled slowly, relief mixing with exhaustion. Sierra's light dimmed again, her body trembling. You need rest, he said. She nodded, whispering, Rest is for those who are safe. Then her eyes glowed faintly again, and she looked at him with warning. They will return, she said. And when they do, they won't just hunt me. They'll come for your world too. The old tunnel was cold and silent. But for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt warmth. It wasn't from the broken heater Daniel had rigged up, or from the faint glow of her skin. It was from the way the little girl beside her smiled even when afraid. Lila's small hand rested in hers, fearless, trusting, human. Daniel sat near the tunnel entrance, watching the night outside through a small crack in the rocks. He hadn't seen the blue lights for hours. But he knew the hunters weren't gone. They were patient, relentless. Waiting for a signal, he turned back towards Sierra, seeing how weak she looked. her breathing shallow. Her armor was cracked, her body trembling, yet her eyes still carried that strange light of defiance. "You should rest," Daniel said quietly. Sarah shook her head. "I don't rest. I recover. You sound like a soldier," he replied. "I was," she said, her voice soft but proud. "I fought to protect beauty, but in my world, beauty is only what shines on the surface." Daniel didn't understand, but he could feel the sadness in her words. He placed a blanket around her shoulders, saying nothing more. Sometimes silence was the kindest thing. Lila sat cross-legged beside Sierra, drawing something in the dust. When Sierra looked closer, she saw a small picture of the three of them standing under a glowing sky. "That's you," Lila said, pointing at the tall figure with shining skin. "And that's me and Dad," Sierra smiled faintly. "You make me look strong." "You are," Lila replied simply. The alien blinked slowly, surprised by the certainty in the child's voice. No one had ever called her that without mockery or pity. Above ground, faint rumbling echoed through the forest. Daniel's communicator buzzed with static, then a robotic voice spoke. "This area is under military lockdown," the message said. "Do not approach the woods." He turned it off immediately, knowing the government would soon come searching too. They would find the wreck, the energy traces, and then maybe Sarah. He couldn't let that happen. He worked quickly, using parts from his bag to build a small device. "What are you making?" Lila asked. "A jammer," Daniel said, "to keep her people from tracking her again." Sarah watched him, amazed by his calmness. "You risk much for someone who isn't your kind," she said. Daniel shrugged. "You didn't choose to fall here, and we didn't choose to ignore it." She studied him carefully, her silver eyes reflecting the faint light. "In my world," she said slowly, "help always comes with a price." Daniel smiled. "Then maybe it's time you see what kindness looks like when it's free," Lila laughed, handing Sierra a wildflower she had found earlier in the tunnel. The alien held it carefully, the petals glowing faintly in her hand. "On my planet, nothing grows without control," she murmured. "Every color, every scent is designed by scientists, not nature." "That's sad," Lila said softly. "Flowers are supposed to be wild." Sarah looked at her, realizing that this small human child understood something her entire race had forgotten. When night fell again, Daniel moved the jammer outside, planting it near the tunnel entrance. He adjusted the frequency until the hum of Sierra's energy was hidden. But it wasn't perfect, and he knew it would fail eventually. He looked up at the stars, wondering which one was her home, and whether the same stars looked down on people who could abandon someone like her. Inside the tunnel, Sierra tried to sleep but couldn't. Memories returned, the council of her world, the soldiers who had dragged her through fire, the command to erase her existence, all because a wound had scarred her once perfect face. She touched the faint burn on her cheek, feeling shame rise like poison. But then she remembered Lila's words, "You're beautiful." And for a moment, the shame faded. She whispered to herself, "Maybe beauty can mean something else later." Daniel came back, his face tired but steady. He checked the small screen on his wrist, sighing. "The jammer's holding for now." Sarah looked at him curiously. "Why do you fight so hard for me?" He hesitated, then said, "Because my daughter looks at you and sees hope." Sierra's eyes softened. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "I see someone who deserves a second chance." Just then, the ground trembled softly. The air grew colder, and the sound of engines echoed from above. Sarah stood up immediately, her instincts awakening. "They've found us," she said, her voice firm now, no longer weak. Daniel grabbed his gear, pulling Lila close. "How long before they're here?" Sarah looked up, her eyes glowing. "Minutes." The tunnel lights flickered as the sky outside turned blue with alien energy. Daniel activated his drones, small machines rising from his pack. Ready to defend, Sarah stepped forward, her hand glowing brighter, the old fear replaced by resolve. Lila clung to Daniel, whispering, "She's not scared anymore." Daniel nodded, eyes on the entrance. "No, she's not." Sarah looked back at them once more and said quietly, "Your kindness made me remember who I was." Outside, the alien ships descended through the mist, their lights painting the forest in ghostly colors. Inside the tunnel, Sarah stood tall, her body glowing like fire under ice. She had been hunted, shamed, and abandoned. But now, because of one human and one brave child, she was ready to fight, not for her world, but for theirs. The forest shook as the alien ships descended through the fog, Blue lights swept across the trees like searching eyes. Daniel held Lila close behind a wall of rock, his heart pounding like a drum. Sarah stood at the mouth of the tunnel, her armor glowing faintly, her face calm but fierce. She could feel the energy of her hunters above, the rhythm of their scanners, the pull of their weapons. "They are close," she said quietly. "Too close." Daniel checked his drones, small flying machines hovering near the entrance. He whispered commands through his wrist device, their wings whirring softly. "They'll see us soon," he said. Sarah nodded. "Then we make them blind." Her hand rose, light pulsing from her palm, the air around her trembling. Daniel stepped back, shielding Lila's eyes as the glow expanded into a shimmering field. It wrapped the tunnel in faint golden mist, hiding their life signs from scanners. But Sarah's strength wavered, her knees bending. Daniel caught her before she fell. "You're burning too much energy," he said. She looked at him with a faint smile. "I've burned for worse reasons." Outside, the first of the hunters landed, tall figures in crystal armor, faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. They moved silently, scanning the ground, their weapons humming with light. "Locate the traitor," one of them said in a metallic voice. "She carries forbidden energy," another replied. Their lights flashed against the trees, cutting through smoke and fog. Inside the tunnel, Daniel adjusted his jammer to full power. The signal cracked through the air, interfering with the hunter's sensors. "Now," he whispered. "They can't track us clearly." Sarah opened her eyes again, glowing faintly in the dim light. She stood straight, no longer trembling, her voice calm but full of purpose. "I will draw them away," she said. Daniel shook his head instantly. "No, you'll die." "If I stay, you die," she answered. "Let me do what I was made for." Lila grabbed her hand, her small fingers shaking. "No, please don't go." For a moment, the warrior's heart cracked. She looked at the child, the only being who had ever called her beautiful. Her voice softened. "Little one, sometimes fighting doesn't mean leaving, it means protecting." Daniel clenched his fists, torn between fear and faith. Finally, he said, "If you're going out there, I'm coming with you." Sarah stared at him, surprised. "You're human and stubborn," he replied. She smiled faintly. "Then stay behind me." They stepped out into the cold night, the forest alive with electric light. The hunters turned as one, their helmets reflecting her face like broken mirrors. "Sarah Avireth," one said. "You are ordered to surrender your corrupted form." Sarah raised her head proudly. "Corruption," she said, "is what you become when you forget compassion." The hunters opened fire, beams of light tearing through the trees. Daniel's drones shot into the air, returning fire with sharp bursts of plasma. Explosions shook the ground, trees splitting and burning. Lila screamed from inside the tunnel, covering her ears. "Dad!" she cried. "I'm here!" Daniel shouted, firing again. Sarah leapt into the air, moving faster than the eye could follow. Her body blazed with white fire, her hands striking like lightning. 2 hunters fell instantly, their armor cracking under her power, but a third fired back, hitting her shoulder. She crashed into the dirt, gasping, blue light spilling from the wound. Daniel ran to her side, pulling her behind a rock. "Stay with me," he said, pressing his hand over the glowing wound. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, everything went still. "I forgot," she whispered weakly, "how humans fight. With heart." More ships landed, engines roaring, trees falling. Daniel knew they couldn't win, not like this. He looked at the broken power core from her wreck, still buried near the tunnel. "If I overload it," he said, "it'll blow, maybe take them all out." Sarah shook her head. "It will kill you too." He smiled faintly. "You said it yourself. Fighting means protecting." But before he could move, she grabbed his wrist. "No," she said, her eyes glowing bright. "This time I fight for you." She rose again, her body trembling but shining like a star. Light spread from her heart, racing across the ground like waves. The hunters stopped, confused by the sudden pulse. Then the energy exploded outward, a silent storm of pure radiance. The blast threw Daniel back, his vision fading white. When the light cleared, The forest was silent. The ships were gone. The hunters gone. Only ash drifted in the cold air like silver snow. Daniel crawled forward, calling her name. "Sierra," he whispered, his voice breaking. He found her lying near the tunnel entrance, motionless, her glowing marks fading slowly, her eyes half open. "You saved us," he said, tears burning his eyes. She smiled faintly. "No," she whispered. "You saved me first." Her hand reached toward him, trembling. Then it fell, still and quiet. Lila ran out, falling to her knees beside Sierra. "Wake up," she cried, her small hands shaking. "Please wake up." Daniel wrapped his arms around his daughter, the forest silent around them. The light in Sierra's skin dimmed completely, leaving only a faint shimmer on her palm. And for the first time in years, the stars above the forest looked closer than ever, as if watching, waiting, mourning the loss of one who had finally found her humanity. The forest was quiet again, but it was the kind of silence that hurt. Daniel sat beside Sierra's still body, the cold air biting his skin. The battle was over, but victory felt hollow. Lila knelt near her, tears streaming down her small face. She touched Sierra's pale hand, whispering softly, "Please wake up." Sierra's glow was fading fast, the blue light that once danced under her skin now only a faint shimmer. Daniel checked her pulse but found nothing. His hands shook, his chest heavy. "She's gone," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. Lila looked up at him, her eyes red but determined. "No," she said. "She can't be gone," she promised. Daniel tried to comfort her, but Lila pulled away. She leaned closer to Sierra's chest, listening, hoping for even a whisper of a heartbeat. Nothing came, only silence. Then something strange happened. A single tear from Lila's cheek fell onto Sierra's glowing mark. The tear glimmered like crystal as it touched her skin, and suddenly, the mark flickered with light. Daniel gasped. What was that? Lila's small hands glowed faintly now, the same soft blue that once surrounded Sierra. She didn't understand it, but she felt it. Something inside her was reaching out. She pressed her palms gently over Sierra's heart, closing her eyes tight. "Please," she whispered. "Don't go. You're my friend." The air trembled, a faint hum filling the space. The ground beneath them pulsed with quiet energy. Daniel stepped back, his eyes wide. Sarah's chest moved, just slightly, then again. Her marks began to glow brighter, spreading across her skin like starlight returning to the night sky. But the light was different now. Softer, warmer, almost human. Lila's face grew pale as the glow from her hands dimmed. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her tightly. "Lila," he said, fear creeping into his voice. "Stay with me," she smiled weakly. "I just wanted her to stay too." Sarah gasped suddenly, her lungs filling with air like she had been drowning for ages. Her eyes flew open, glowing with fierce blue light. She looked around in confusion, then down at Lila, lying weak in Daniel's arms. "What happened?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel's eyes were wet, half in shock, half in relief. "You died," he said quietly. "But she brought you back." Sierra looked at Lila, her expression softening with wonder. She touched the girl's forehead, feeling the faint pulse of her own energy inside her. "She carries my light," Sierra said softly. "Our life force is shared now." Daniel held his daughter close. "Can she survive it?" Sierra nodded slowly. "Yes, but only if I stay close. Our bond is linked by the gift she gave." Lila opened her eyes again, whispering faintly, "See, I told you you're not scary." Sierra's lips curved into a gentle smile, tears forming in her silver eyes. "I am honored, little one," she said softly. "You gave me more than life, you gave me belonging." Daniel helped Sierra sit up, her strength slowly returning. Outside, faint light flickered through the trees, the aftermath of the battle glowing like fading embers. The forest smelled of ash and ozone, but also something clean, new. For the first time since she had crashed, Sierra felt peace. She looked at Daniel, her voice quiet. "You risked everything for me." He shook his head. "You saved us too." Sierra glanced toward the stars, her gaze distant. "My people will not stop," she said. "They will come again, but now they know where Earth is." Daniel's face hardened. "Then we'll be ready." Sarah looked at him, surprised by the calm in his voice. "You speak like a warrior," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe you taught me how." Lila laughed weakly. "Now you're both heroes." Sierra looked at her and smiled sadly. "Heroes bleed, little one, but you heal." They walked back toward the cabin as the night slowly cleared. Stars shimmered between the clouds, reflecting softly in the puddles of melted frost. Daniel carried Lila while Sarah followed close, her light guiding the way like a lantern. At the edge of the forest, Sierra paused, sensing something far above. She looked up and saw a dark shape in the clouds, a massive ship. Silent but watching, her expression turned solemn. "They've sent the command vessel," she whispered. Daniel followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. "What do they want now?" Sarah's voice was low, steady. "Me." She placed her hand on Lila's chest where the faint blue light still glowed. "If I go, she will live," she said softly. "But if I stay, they will burn your world." Daniel shook his head instantly. "No, there must be another way." Sarah smiled sadly. "There is always another way, but sometimes it chooses us." The wind picked up, blowing ash across the ground like falling snow. Sierra looked at the small human child she now called her sister, then at the man who had shown her that kindness was stronger than any weapon. "I will not let them harm you," she whispered. "I owe you my light, and I will protect it." She stepped toward the clearing, her armor glowing brighter with each step. Daniel reached out. "Sierra, wait." She turned, her silver eyes gentle but fierce. "Tell her," she said, "that she made me believe again." And with that, she rose into the night, her body turning into a streak of blue light heading toward the waiting ship. Daniel stood frozen, holding Lila close as the glow disappeared into the stars. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint echo of her voice. "I am not ashamed anymore." The sky was burning with blue fire. Above the forest, the giant alien ship hung like a dark moon. Silent but powerful, its light spread across the clouds, turning night into strange daylight. Daniel stood outside his cabin, holding Lila close, both staring at the glowing sky. The air trembled with energy, humming like the breath of something ancient and alive. Sarah's light streaked upward through the mist, her body glowing brighter with each second. She was rising toward the ship, toward the people who had once called her a failure. Her heart beat in rhythm with Lila's far below. Two lives bound by one pulse as she neared the ship. She could feel their scanners lock onto her, reading her life signs, her code, her shame. "Sierra of Virith," a deep voice echoed through the air. "You were ordered erased," Sarah floated in silence, her eyes glowing softly. "I was," she replied. "And yet I stand before you alive inside the ship." The alien commander watched from behind a screen of blue mist. He was tall and perfect, his silver armor flawless, his face without scar or doubt. "You are corrupted by human contact," he said. "Their weakness has infected you." Sarah smiled faintly. "If compassion is weakness, then yes, I am infected." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You betray your own kind," she lifted her head proudly. "No," she said. "I finally understand what being kind means. Back on Earth." Daniel's hands were trembling as he tried to adjust his radio link. Static crackled, then Sierra's voice came through. "Faint but clear, Daniel," she said softly. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," he answered quickly. "Where are you?" "What are they doing?" Her voice was calm, steady, almost peaceful. "They're listening," she said. "And maybe they're learning." The ship's light grew brighter, spreading like dawn across the trees. Lila shielded her eyes, whispering, "She's talking to them, Dad." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, she is." They could hear her voice now, echoing across the sky like music carried by wind. She spoke not in human language or alien tone, but something in between, a voice that vibrated in the heart more than the ear. "She's not begging," Daniel whispered. "She's teaching." Inside the command vessel, hundreds of alien soldiers listened, their faces unreadable. Sierra's words filled the ship. "You called me broken because I no longer fit your idea of beauty," she said. But I found beauty in a place you would never look, in a child's kindness, in a human's courage. Her hand pressed to her heart, light pulsing outward. I saw perfection, she continued, not in the mirror, but in love that asked for nothing. The commander stepped forward, his voice uncertain for the first time. What do you ask for, Sierra? Sarah looked down toward Earth, where Daniel and Lila stood watching. I ask for peace, she said, for understanding, for the right to exist without shame. Silence filled the ship. Then a low hum began, Sarah's signal spreading through their systems, rewriting their codes, unlocking something forgotten one by one. The glowing symbols on their armor dimmed, replaced by softer light. Her words had reached them, not as commands, but as truth, but the process came at a cost. Sarah's body began to fade, her light burning faster, brighter, her connection to Lila strained, the bond glowing painfully in the child's chest. Daniel fell to his knees beside his daughter. Lila, stay with me, he said. Panic rising, Lila held her chest, tears streaming down. She's saying goodbye, she whispered. Daniel looked up at the sky, shouting, Sierra! Don't you dare leave her. High above, Sarah heard his voice echo through the static. She smiled faintly, her voice gentle. She will live, Daniel. My light is hers now. The commander stepped back, bowing his head slightly. You are not a failure, he said quietly. You are different? Sarah looked at him, her voice fading. Different is beautiful. Her body dissolved into pure light, scattering across the sky like a shower of stars. The ship turned slowly, its engines humming softly, and then, for the first time in alien history, it left without destruction. It vanished into the clouds, leaving behind a calm silence. Daniel held Lila tightly as the light faded. The night grew dark again, but the air still glowed faintly where Sierra's light had been. Lila looked up at the sky, whispering, She's not gone, Dad. She's part of the stars now. Daniel nodded, his voice trembling. Yes, sweetheart, she is. Days later, the world still spoke about the strange lights over the forest. Scientists called it a natural event. Governments called it a hoax, but Daniel and Lila knew the truth. Every night they sat on the porch watching the stars, waiting for that familiar glow. Sometimes a small blue light would blink in the sky. Soft and warm, Lila would smile and whisper, Good night, Sarah, one evening. As the sun set and the stars began to appear, Lila pointed to the brightest one. Glowing faintly blue, Dad, she said softly. She's still beautiful. Daniel looked up, his eyes wet but smiling. Yes, he whispered, so beautiful. Dad, the wind passed through the trees carrying a faint hum. Sierra's song, gentle and proud, and for the first time, the universe felt smaller, kinder, and full of light again.